Hi, Tom. Thanks for spending some time.
You're welcome. Just a minute.
Uh,
All right.
when I look back at your journey in a broad perspective, I think the things that jump out at me as we are jumping off point is to say that you came in, from my perspective, as having a fair amount of confidence in your Parkinson's and how you were handling it, and doubt slowly started to creep in, and then there seemed to be this, oh, I have to deal with more than maybe I thought I did. Does that sound like your journey, or how did it feel to you going through
Oh, I
this?
think that captures it in two or three sentences. That's about it. I still remain confident, but what happened is that for the first time in 2 years, a major new symptom, appeared, which was balance. And just today, 3 or 4 times, I've caught myself. I rarely fall, but I'm losing my balance a lot more often, and that was disconcerting.
And I think that has to do with, part of the reason we look at this from a storytelling perspective is to say, we'd like to believe the story is I'm fine, wouldn't we all? Right.
Yeah.
Well, Parkinson's, if we're facing the harsh reality of it, says at some point things are not going to be fine. If it's going to progress anything like we know, what is that like to face that? And maybe how did the storytelling aspect help you discover that for yourself?
Yeah. I view myself as an optimist. I'm positive until it's hammered into my head 50 different times in 50 different ways that I shouldn't be optimistic. I think that optimism, along with exercise and medicines, I think that altogether is the really important parts of how I deal with Parkinson's, how anyone should deal with it. So my confidence was partly because I thought we had it under control. Everything was fine. There were no change in symptoms for like 3 or 4 years. And the medicines seemed to be calibrated right. We got rid of some, added some others. So it was a process. But I felt like things were going smoothly. But then it was that slap of reality. And it happened to Susan and me at about the same time. She and I were writing back and forth about that. And it was a big awakening to her too. It's a big symptom. It's a hell of a lot more important. Balance is a hell of a lot more important than a tremor or a restless leg or, whatever.
Right, exactly. I mean, Parkinson's is considered this motor, symptom disease. That's how it's measured broadly. But if we don't deal with these non-motor symptoms about the ones that'll come forward, without acceptance, there's no compliance. And without compliance, there's no behavior change, right? And you can't help yourself. I mean,
Right.
let's dive into that a little bit, because like I say, I think for many of you, and you know this as well, the idea of seeing this, when you saw this program offered, and there was going to be writing and a storytelling, I mean, what were your initial thoughts about it?
Yikes. I'm thinking, John, why are you thinking of me when you read about this? But then I just got to thinking, what have I got to lose? I'm not an actor. Improv in a stage format, scares the hell out of me. But then as I got into it, I realized that it's a completely different type of, it's a completely different strategy to addressing some of the symptoms, some of what Parkinson's brings to me. And I love to write. So when you add it together, I wasn't intimidated by the writing. I was intimidated by the fact that I'd have to share it with so many people. And I got over that real quickly as soon as we started sharing, and I realized how much I had to learn from the other people who were sharing their stories.
I love that. I love that provided that kind of safety net for you, that others, because why do you think that is? Why do you feel like, oh, this is my story, I should keep it to myself? Or what was going on there?
Maybe it's just that, I'm a little bit of an introvert, a little bit of a don't share everything. And some of it was kind of fostered by the backstory that I included in several of my writings, which is that I've got a brother and a sister who act like I'm not sick, who never ask any questions at all. They're very quick to share their stories of their illnesses. And I think I meet them there with, I'm talking to them about theirs, but they're not talking to me about mine, And I think that's that sort of has closed me up rather than opened me. But I'm trying to find a way to have that conversation with them, because they need to know they've got two brothers with Parkinson's. That's not common.
I want to pursue that because I think that's a really important point. It came up more than once. The familial aspect of Parkinson's and how it is or isn't talked about within the family, leading you, the person with Parkinson's, to feel isolated. What else? How is that feeling of not having family members address or know how to address you in an open forum?
Yeah, it's a little frustrating. It's bigger than Parkinson's, because my sister, I have a sister who I could talk with her all day and she would never ask me a question. She just talks and waits for me to finish saying whatever word or two I can get in edgewise. I've got another brother who I rarely see, who is just indifferent. He's just totally engaged in his in-laws and really doesn't talk to any of his siblings. It's not just me. So with that as a backdrop, my expectations of having a conversation about Parkinson's is really a little hopeful, to say the least. But I'm the optimist. So I'm hoping that the sister will ask me a question, or I'll find a way to tell her because they need to know.
Do you think that perhaps presenting your Parkinson's experience as a story, using the power of story that we are as a species, we're story loving, creatures, right? That's how we organize and pattern the things in our world. We've done it since, Neanderthals could make cave drawings, right? This is how we make sense of life. If you can meet people on some level and say, here's my, in this case, hero's journey, do you think that might open them up to at least, you could tell it in whatever form you wanted to, but at least say, oh, that's what you're thinking, feeling, going through in this process?
Yeah, I think I have to seize the lead here, seize the opportunity, and say, look, I've got something I want to talk to you about.
Yeah.
And it's me, but it's me as related to the genetic, pool that you've got, and so it's in your family too.
Yeah.
I think I have to prompt it, and hopefully that will get them to ask some questions.
And within that, because we brought up, the hero's journey, which is the, structure for this class, that word hero, how did you feel when that first got brought up?
Ill-placed, like I'm not a hero.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that I'm handling it well, that I'm coping with it,
Right.
but to call me a hero is just a little bit misplaced, but I'll take it.
Right. You're very much on par with, I think, most people's idea of what a hero is. So what is a hero if you were to define it? I mean, how do you see a hero in society or maybe in storytelling?
Someone who just does something really exceptional and does it exceptionally well. So someone who tackles a real challenge and comes out the other end with nothing but accolades and pride for what they did, but also other people realize that it's a very useful contribution. Right. I have parts of my life where I would say I'm a hero.
Okay.
But in Parkinson's, I don't think I've earned that title yet.
Do you recognize that, and because we studied Star Wars in that model, and it's very common in the hero's journey, that the hero almost always doesn't recognize himself or herself as a hero at the beginning of the journey? And may in fact refuse that. That might be part of the refusal of the call. Who, me?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I've had two big recollections of that in the last month. One was last night, where I was sitting at a baseball game and I got an email from somebody who I have mentored for 30 years, 25 years. Mm-hmm. And she got the job of her dreams and wrote me to say thank you for everything that I did. And chokes me up. And a month ago, someone got a senior job, and once again reached out to me to tell me before it was official, before it was announced, he was thanking me for everything that I had done. So I think, and that's what I spend a lot of my time doing now. I run meetings around the country to provide career guidance to people who want to get jobs in oceanography. And I've done 25 of them in the last 5 years. So going around the country doing this sort of thing is something that I do. So it's really nice to know that in some people's eyes, I think I'm one of their heroes. So that's good. And it gets me thinking, well, what can I do in Parkinson's? So I'm leading a group and trying to do some things in that arena too.
You clearly have a skill set, as you've identified. You have the ability to make change in others. Sometimes in the hero's journey, that means stepping up to meet the challenge, as it were. If, and I guess in the Parkinson's world, it's about identifying, opportunity, right? And saying, here's what I'm comfortable with, here's what I'm not comfortable with. And how much of that becoming comfortable with, how much you're going to address Parkinson's was your journey? Because it seemed like a large part to me. Just you would to keep it in the background, kind of, right?
I'm very upfront about having it.
Right.
So I'm not ashamed in public. I'm not, humiliated by my drooling. I'm not, everything is fine. I don't know. I don't have any strong thoughts about that.
No worries. And that's fine. Sometimes the frame of the question doesn't fit. Let's go forward and look further at the program. So, you were talking about your journey that you hadn't really looked at, 2015, and that's common. A lot of people get, the diagnosis and then say, okay, great. And, or not great, but okay, here's what I'm going to do. And they start becoming active, and they don't necessarily reflect on the choices that were made and what that path was that they set for themselves. How was that for you to go back and look at the ordinary world, life before Parkinson's, and immediately upon being diagnosed, the call to adventure, as it were?
Yeah, I surprised myself a little bit because I think when I first was diagnosed, convincingly, not by a general neurologist, but by a movement disorder person, my first reaction was, all right, I realized that everyone with Parkinson's is different, and I could progress very quickly or I could progress very slowly. And I said, all right, what can I do to increase the odds of progressing slowly? And what I heard more than anything else was exercise. And I love to exercise, whether it's gardening or running or playing soccer. So I figured, hell, that's an easy prescription. That's like you're telling me to take a drug, and I got the drug on my shelf already. There's no big deal.
Yeah.
So I had an easy step into something that I thought was one of the most important things that I could do. As a matter of fact, it almost validated me asking my wife to put up with me being gone yet another weekend to play soccer. Because this was therapy. I had to do this. I had to take 2 in the morning and 2 at night, and I have to do it. So it was kind of smooth. It was accepted by my wife, accepted by everybody else, and encouraged, because people on the soccer team, I play on a soccer team with people who are over 65, and they knew that that I couldn't kick the ball playing soccer, and I can't kick, but they knew how I could help. So I think everyone sort of embraced it, and I had good support.
Talk to me about that adaptation, playing soccer without kicking, and how you're able to contribute.
I play goalie. And so if I can catch the ball, that's the big thing. If I can't throw it, which I can't, and I can't kick it, someone has to come to me, and I have to just pass it real quickly to them. I can't kick the ball the length of the field. I can't throw it. I used to be able to do all those things, but now it's limited to catching. So it's I'm like in a baseball analogy, I'm like a pinch runner. I can do one thing. Don't ask me to field. Don't ask me to hit. I can be Herb Washington. I can be the pinch runner. I went to school with him, by the way. I once ran on a track with him. He ran 3 times faster than me. But you remember him from the Oakland Athletics?
I certainly do. Yeah, you picked one of my guys. So
yeah,
for sure.
I'm not exactly limited that much in soccer. I don't make a 30-second appearance, because usually playing goalie, you play the whole game.
Sure.
So.
But what I like is the metaphor of the idea of becoming a specialist, and that specialist has a role. And yes, baseball has several of them, from a pinch runner to a pinch hitter to a left-handed only one guy reliever, that type of thing.
Right.
So you seeing yourself within the world of soccer, I just hadn't thought of it that way. I mean, I was immediately going, what do you mean you can't kick? Oh, of course, the goalie is a really important role. And you still get to use your skill set and bring everything else you have to it. I think that's the kind of thing an outsider wouldn't recognize. And I think it's a lovely kind of wedge story for you. I don't know if I missed it in your writing, but I don't remember you writing about that in
No,
particular.
I didn't. I didn't. And the other thing I like about it is that you can fall down on purpose.
Okay.
You know, I mean, it's easy to dive 15 times during a game.
Yeah.
So I learned how to fall. I learned how to fall and roll and get up again. So there's some good and some bad.
Okay. Well, again, and that to me kind of speaks toward the improvisational, the yes and component of what we do. This was your first time being exposed to improv, is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
So you mentioned already, hey, I'm not an actor. And I think from the outside, was that your perspective of what improv is? It's something for actors?
Yeah, I thought it would be something like individually, performing individually on stage, doing what I don't know, not necessarily comedy, but I thought it would be something that it would put me in the spotlight more than I usually am.
And how, after using it as one of our modalities within the intervention, how would you describe improvisation via your understanding now?
I don't know if I would use the word because it sort of implied something different. I would say it's exploring the communication side of therapies. It's non-Western medicine. It's a different approach. It's addressing the more social side of Parkinson's therapies.
And why is that important, the social side of Parkinson's therapy?
Well, because you open my eyes with the things that we do, everything from the games to the conversation to sharing the writing. It opened my eyes to the benefits of doing things that don't have to do with medicine or exercise. It's a whole nother suite of things to do. You know, parts of my brain to exercise, a whole nother social realm. You know, it's not my soccer team.
No.
It's not my Parkinson's group. It's not my volunteers at a museum. These are my 16, tiles for a Parkinson's class.
Right.
So it was a whole nother approach, a whole nother opportunity to do something. And I realized that something was important.
And does it, to that end, the old line, the best exercise is the one you'll do. Do you find it to be an enjoyable activity now that you understand it and how to play?
Yeah, I do. Sometimes it's hard, like the class that we just finished with the 12 steps. That was at noon on Saturday, so that kind of overwhelmed my entire day, including soccer games, which were Saturday morning. So the timing was not that good for my time zone, but I realized that people were everywhere from you to Ali in England. I had to go with the flow, but I found that it was worth going the extra step to have lunch at 11 o'clock or at 2 o'clock. It was good to be on the class, even though it was at lunch. So I went from a doubter or a what is this when John Hurley first told me about it to a devotee, to someone who I bought the book that we were bantering back and forth about a book that John Hurley mentioned by the I'm drawing a blank on her name, the doctor. Pardon me?
Which, Truth and Comedy, or which one are we talking about?
No, this is the book by the woman who's an MD at Mass General who has MS, and it's co-authored by a woman whose last name is Zimmerman, whose husband died by suicide.
Oh, wow.
This is I've got it upstairs.
Okay, I'm drawing a blank, but make sure, please do remind me.
Yeah, we were emailing back and forth, and you found it online and said, "Is this the book you're talking about?" John Hurley was listening to PBS radio in Boston.
Yes.
And they interviewed the author.
Right.
And we were going back and forth with where to find it.
I'll have to, yeah.
That's a good book.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad that's proving valuable to you. And again, I think that's part of the social thing too. You mentioned, these different types of input, looking at things different ways. You never know where the influence is going to come for, or in this sense, a mentor. And I wanted to bring that up because in your first meeting of the hero's journey, we brought forth the mentors, the previous participants of the feasibility trial.
Right.
What was it like to meet the mentors? And what kind of influence did that have on you going through the program, knowing there had been a group before you?
Yeah, I met some of them because they had spoken at the Within Our Reach conference that you'll be speaking at this fall, because John Hurley introduced me to that. So I not only attended, but I'm on the planning committee with him. So I met Susan, and I met the other woman whose name escapes me.
Diane, I believe.
Yes, yes. And I got more attached to Susan because it's just something resonated. We had a lot of shared experiences and she was going through, discovering some things at the same time I was. And I talked to her more when she was in Baltimore for the Within Our Reach conference. It was very useful having them there. I never did bounce my work off, my writings off them as much as I should have. I talked generally about it with email back and forth with Susan a couple of times, and I only shared one of my writings with her. Some of it was that I was doing the writing so late that it was just, there wasn't enough time to do it and still get it to you by Thursday night. But it's something that I wish I had done more of.
Well, that opportunity exists outside. We are finished with the formal part of that 12 weeks. However, the connections remains, and the program continues to grow. So that I just reiterate that to say, as you develop anything you've written or wish to share anything you've written, I'm reasonably certain the mentors would be happy to hear and continue to bounce ideas.
Yeah, that reminds me, my daughter, I just had a birthday recently.
Happy
and my daughter gave me Storyboard. Have you heard of Storyboard?
Well, tell me if it's the one I'm thinking of. I know the program Storyboard, which is
well, she purchased I don't know how many number. You write to one question a week,
okay.
And at the end they pull all the writings together and photos, whatever you want to do, and they bind it as a book, and it's memories of in this case, my daughter. I got divorced and I didn't spend as much time with her as we would have liked. So she's filling in the blanks with the questions that she's asking. And some of them are going to relate. We just started last week. Some of them are going to get into Parkinson's, I'm sure. But the first one's, it's the same sort of thing. It's tell me about what it was like when you were a kid. Tell me about your high school days. Tell me. And it's cathartic. And it reminds me of writing, for improv, but this is writing for my just my life generally, not just specifically the Parkinson's episode.
Right. Well, and again, you never know when you write your story how it's going to be received. I think that's the value of putting it in front of the group and what people might hear and highlight back to you and say, did you know I knew that too? Or I felt that, or thank God I thought I was the only one type of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. In this case, it's things that the questions the question I answered and the ones that I've seen so far are before she was even born. It's my childhood, but I think it's going to, by the time we get to the 12th or 18th, I think I'm not sure how many she bought, but we'll catch up, and it'll be her years, and we'll get up to the current time.
You said something earlier about, your family, some of them struggling to discuss with you your Parkinson's, and the way I heard you frame it was that, it's important because of the fact that this is in their genetic soup too, whether they like it or not. It strikes me similarly in the storytelling exercise with your daughter, as it was with all storytelling across generations. There are going to be similarities that pop up that are going to be like, oh, that's you too, or you do that too. I had no idea, especially if there maybe has been a gap of time or distance between. I did grow up with my father in the house, and yet it wasn't until we began exploring via Boys of Summer that we began to see a lot of the parallels in places, and then began to bridge the places where, there weren't them to say, well, just because we didn't understand each other doesn't mean we can't more if we both agree we'd like to, right?
Yeah.
But that comes with listening to each other,
right? And wondering, like what was your childhood like, or
yes,
what was the one I just wrote about was one of the favorite memories from my childhood, and it was summer vacations. And there's no way that my daughter, that Charlotte, would know what I did in my summer vacations 60 years ago. She
Yeah.
wouldn't know the nuances.
Yeah.
She wouldn't know even generally, like, where did I go? Not only what did I do, but where did I go? Who was I with?
Yeah.
So writing about that was a different audience with a completely different backdrop, and it connects to her. And I basically spent my summers in the middle of nowhere, and she likes to do that too, but she doesn't know that that's what I did all the time. But she has a similar idea of what a summer vacation might be like. Camping. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you draw those lines where you didn't know they existed before, it can do a lot for a relationship. That's
great. I think there'll be a couple of aha moments.
Yeah, definitely. I want to ask you specifically, there was a guest speaker you commented about who was Derek Flores from Zappos Adaptive. That's a very specific modality and a very specific kind of offer that it seems like a lot of you weren't aware of. Talk to me about why you thought that was an important guest speaker, and if that changed any of your thought about, how you dress or how it affects your life.
Yeah, it helped a little bit because I lived through this with my father-in-law, who passed away a couple of years ago at 94, but got to the point where he couldn't tie his shoes, and it was hard for him to get up from a chair, and he couldn't cook his own meals, things like that. But for me, I got a little bit of an inkling that there were special types of clothing and gear out there through my father-in-law. But then when it became hard for me to reach my feet, when it became hard for me to, get my pants on without falling over, things like that made me realize, there's a company, and it's Zappos, a big company with free returns, and they're working on things like, shoes without laces that have got Velcro. One of my problems is edema, and my feet swell. If I go to someone's house and I take my shoes, go to someone's house for dinner, I get there at 5 and I take my shoes off so I don't muddy up their house, I can't get them back on. More than one night, I've had to walk home in socks.
Oh, wow.
From being at a neighbor's house. So the idea of shoes that have got an elastic panel or Velcro and they're slightly adjustable, that sounds very like an orthopedic device, but it also sounds like something that would be very helpful. So I was surprised, impressed, happy to hear that they were making clothes without buttons that look like they had buttons, but they're just simple snaps, or shoes that look like they're laced, but it's not. Things that would be helpful without being as obvious as a walker or something like that.
And let me dive into that a little further. Why is that important? That those things exist, and what are the potential pitfalls of those not being around? What happens if you don't get that type of support?
Yeah, I don't want that sort of thing to be something that stands in the way of me having a normal life doing the things that I want to do. I don't want to. I went to a baseball game last night with a good friend who's got MS, and it's very difficult for him to get around. And when it comes time for me to need a cane or a walker or a wheelchair or a scooter, I just as soon have it be something that doesn't get to be, a burden, a big thing that's sitting in the corner. I want to be able to do things without. It's not an embarrassment. It's not a pride thing. It's just why make it, a big albatross if it can be something that's solved as simply as some of the solutions that Zappos is offering. I just was impressed with the ingenuity and the simplicity. And it just never occurred to me that sort of thing would be out there.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I think that awareness is, again, part of the power of the group and the offering, is to say, did you know? And some things you'll know, like you knew more about the boxing, for instance. Some things like this were more of a surprise to you.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's something that I wanted to mention is the guest speakers at the end not only brought some variety, but really broadened the experience. I liked having them. Some of them I connected with more than others, but that's to be expected. It was nice change of pace. Nice, different than the rest of each of the classes.
Right. Good. Yeah, and that was the idea, was to expand the offering. We have our focus time doing what we did as a class, and now let's open our minds to something. Like you say, some of it'll stick, some of it'll pass by,
Yeah.
whatever. It'll be something to experience, and we'll
Yeah.
see what it adds up to.
Yeah.
So now we talk about getting to the end of your hero's journey and what you felt. And this kind of speaks toward, I mean, in a way, you're doing that storytelling with your daughter already. And you had mentioned earlier the possibility of having something to offer the Parkinson's community and maybe pursuing that, knowing what you've done in your field of oceanography. Do you think about how having a version of your story that you've written within this class, that you might be able to share that and perhaps do something helpful within the Parkinson's community?
I think so. I'm doing a little bit of that with the group that I lead, but that's more shepherding people to, I mean, organizing a call every 2 weeks and trying to get some people to participate. That's different than that's almost custodial or administrative. But doing something that's more substantive, more personal, more sharing ideas about what works, and me sharing ideas about sharing yaks and the whole class, telling them what we're doing, that we're writing, that it's not improv, going through the same conversations that we have. I wouldn't mind doing that. That's something that I'm trying to do a little bit on my own.
Well, I think, as you described a couple of times, there are barriers to entry when something is foreign. And these programs are both novel, the Yes and Exercise and the Day One. And there is, I think, reasonable skepticism about what is this thing about them, and why would I bother? And I think those are good questions to ask. I'm not at all bothered by them. The further they go and the more participants we have, the more proof, therefore, with studies and the trials and all that stuff, the more hopefully it becomes something where, again, it's both serving you to put yourself out there in such a way, and it's giving the community something that they didn't know existed, similar to the Zappos type experience. Go, oh, that I hadn't even considered how that might improve my quality of life. Does that jive with you?
Yeah, it does. Yes, definitely. Yeah, it was eye-opening. And just same with the exercises. Several of the speakers were talking about exercising, and it wasn't exercise as much as movement. Trying to remember the sequence of movements, and it's like doing the chicken dance. You got to do it in the right order, otherwise you look like you're just spastic.
Well, it's interesting because exercise, a lot of it is very coordinated, and it has its value, right? With dance, with various kinds of movement or boxing, right? They'll say 1, 2, 3 little counts and all this stuff. Improv is a little bit antithetical in that regard, that you don't know what's going to be next. It's
Right.
a more general awareness. So it's not one is better than the other. It's hopefully these are different skill sets that, like you said, can open you up.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what's happened over the last year since I've been attending classes with you as my Sherpa. It's a totally different suite of activities addressing a whole nother suite of needs related to Parkinson's that I was totally unaware of, but quickly saw, oh, geez, I'm a very analytical, process type person, but this breaks my shell and in a very good way.
Well, yeah, thank you for being open to it.
Yeah.
That speaks. I mean, I know the word hero is a hang up for a lot of people, but it does speak towards strength and courage and resilience to step into a unfamiliar place and allow yourself to be vulnerable.
Yeah. It sounds like you get a lot of feedback or pushback from the university people about doing something different.
So I'll summarize that to say that I think I told you this or not, that I have and this is my creative, which has been held back so much by the scientific process. And, I'm very much an outlier. I don't have a BS or an MS leading into this. I have my fine arts degrees leading into this. So that there will be a stage play that's called my DIY MF PhD, basically addressing a lot of the power structure and powers that be that taught me lessons they didn't know they taught me about, I think, largely what people with Parkinson's go through in the power structure that is medicine. So that's kind of the draw. The stories that I've heard from the Parkinson's community about doctors that don't listen, doctors that push back, doctors that tell you it is this way when you're like, actually it's this way, and they won't. And I'm not condemning the medical system. I'm saying there are enough stories to say, just to recognize, just like I'm not condemning academia. There's a number of wonderful things. And there are a number of stories that says, let's not let power and fear and the need to be right about something keep us from exploring and listening to others who are on their own individual journey. So, that's the summary.
Well, good luck. Your comprehensives are coming up soon?
Yeah, we have that coming up next month, and August, so that'll be good. Let me ask you this final thing.
Yes.
You say here, I don't want to read what you wrote. The prompt was, I can see how the hero's journey applies to my journey with Parkinson's because, and you wrote, the material is so relevant, and the group aspect of it reminded me that I get much more out of an activity when others are involved. I need to get out, get up, and get going with others. Expand on that a little for me.
Well, if I had my druthers, I'd probably be out, fiddling with the dahlia tubers and tending to the perennials and things like that. I mean, I greatly enjoy
oceanography terminology, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Just for the viewers at home.
No, that's the perennials, and I'd much rather be building a stone wall, going for a run,
Gardens,
doing a lot of things that are a little bit individual or a small group. I enjoy that. I enjoy my downtime, my quiet time, but I realize that there's also a lot to be gained by doing things with a group, whether it's a Parkinson's group or I volunteer at a Smithsonian Museum, so the docents get together and do things. Those types of things are important too. And improv, the regular classes, the Tuesday opportunities, but the regular classes just got me invested a little bit more than I would have been normally, typically. So that was very good. It got me out of my shell a little bit more than I would have been. Not that I never could do anything with others, but this was a whole nother group of others.
Right. And should someone come up to you similarly to those stories you told from the oceanography world in your forward time and speak to you in terms that maybe sheds light on you as a hero in their own eyes, how will you respond to that? Will you allow yourself to be seen that way in their eyes?
I think I will. Yeah, being told that by 2 people in a month got me thinking about it a little bit more, including, why didn't this other guy say thank you? But it was nice to hear from those that I did hear from. And it got me thinking about others, and it got me thinking about the people that I should say thank you to.
Gratitude
so
is
not just coming to me, but coming from me.
Yeah.
Goes both ways.
We talk a lot about gratitude, play games about gratitude. And I think it goes back to everything you just talked about, the societal way we live together, that I too enjoy my individual time. And I recognize that it's a part of living in this world, is where we are. To live fully is not to always just take individually. It is to contribute socially, and maybe in ways that we didn't even realize we could.
Yeah. It's like another network in my life, another bit of another couple of threads in the fabric.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for your time, Tom. And I'm glad you're enjoying this, and I'll continue to see you in Yes and Exercise as we progress there too.
I'll try to get in there. I must have been very lucky because I registered the night before. I must have been one of the last people to get a seat.
Hey, we're selling out now. We're going to have to get more classes. That's a good thing.
Yeah, it is a good thing. Well, thanks for everything you're doing, Robert. Good luck.
You betcha, Tom. See you soon.
Yep. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.